Mr. Abhijit Day, who's a global entrepreneur, product strategist, and design thinking expert with over 25 years of leadership experience in product innovation, consulting, and entrepreneurship, has held senior roles at SAP, Intel, Microsoft, and Infosys. As the former vice president at SAP, Sir has spearheaded global product innovation and new business incubation. Alongside that, he has also successfully co-founded four startups, blending corporate expertise with entrepreneurial vision. Sir has delivered pioneering solutions, including the SAP Ganges retail business network, the Intel Cache Appliance, and multiple healthcare and SaaS platforms that truly continue to transform industries till this date. Recently, Sir has also earned a certificate in artificial intelligence, business strategies, and applications from UC Berkeley. Honored with awards such as the World CSR Award, SAP Innovator of the Year, and the Intel Excellence Award, Sir remains committed to solving global challenges, mentoring future leaders, and driving purposeful innovation. Sir, may I please request you to take over for the session?
I thank you for that kind introduction. Uh, so, I have spent quite a few years of my life in the startup environment. Spent a few in corporate doing incubation, and a lot of these years have been in, you know, using design thinking for various aspects of my career and my personal life. So today I'm going to focus on design thinking for about 20 minutes on the frameworks and the methodologies. I will assume that you guys are all familiar with design thinking to a good extent. It's not a very hard concept to understand. It is, however, in my experience, a very hard concept to internalize. That is to say, the English language is very simple to understand, but to internalize it and implement in various environments, in the startup environments, and be able to follow a discipline to go through this in a structured manner, that is a very challenging thing. Usually, you take a lot of practice, and then you do it repeatedly, and slowly it becomes second nature. So I hope you can see the presentation. I hope this is in presentation mode. So let me jump straight. Before I start, can everybody hear me clearly? I just want to know that my voice is synced in this mic.
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Maybe everybody can share a yes on the chat.
All right, I'm getting a lot of yeses. So we'll keep the question and answer session to the end. So please note down your questions that you might have. And, as we go along the slides and the story, we'll try to answer the questions at the end. Hopefully, a lot of them will get answered as we go alongside, okay? Considering that this is not a very long session, design thinking workshops can take between 8 hours to, and implementation of a design thinking cycle can take months, depending on how large a project is or how large the environment is in. So I picked a very large project, SAP Ganges, to go through with this. That way, whatever startup ideas you have and startup teams that you form, I would suppose that you could see such a large project and understand that it is feasible to implement this on any scale. That means whether it's in a small team just starting up at 0 to 1, or as you go to 0 to 10 in the startup environment. So design thinking, there are different ways of approaching it. If you go online and or you go to a design thinking class, Hasso-Plattner Institute is the de facto standard for design thinking. There's one based near Berlin and one based in Stanford. They kind of narrow it down into three areas. You are trying to use design thinking to basically understand if something is feasible, desirable, and viable. Now, there are extensive projects that have been done using design thinking, which follow a different format. Uh, what you're looking to is answer what if, what are we developing, what can we do in the future that makes it more user-centric. Now, I'd like to preface it that there are two kinds of innovation: push innovation and pull innovation. Majority of innovation is pull innovation. Pull innovation means you find information from your users and the people who are currently going to be your customers and buyers, and from their pain points derive what product or service you will offer. Push innovation, which is very rare, is things that the customer doesn't know what they want or cannot know what they want. And a good example is silicon design. When Intel is designing a processor, it takes about 4 or 5 years to design the fab that is going to manufacture the processor. It takes about 8 to 9 years before that processor goes to market. So by then, the whole world has changed. So Intel cannot go to customers and ask customers using design thinking, tell me what your pain points are and I'll design a processor based on that. They have to think very futuristically, looking at technologies, and assume what the user would possibly use that processor for. And by the way, in that methodology, sometimes you miss the bus. Intel missed the mobile bus. Intel missed the almost missed the AI bus, I would say. And so the push innovations, where you think you know what the customer wants, and therefore you develop a product without asking the customer, usually does not turn out well. In design thinking, we're also looking for something very specific. That is the ability to empathize. That's a very key word. Success in any format, any career, I would say today, starts with the ability to empathize, to be able to put yourself in your customer's shoes. And definition of a customer is anybody who needs your services. Design thinking also comes down when you look at ground reality, how you're going to do it. Remember, it is something that's very iterative. You do small incremental changes. You go test those changes and come back and again make a little change again. But the most important part of design thinking is you have to use value validation with every increment. You have to go and validate the value you have created with that new feature, with that new, whatever gizmo you're building. And after you've validated the value, you come and then you add the feature required most. Also, in the ground reality, I saw that you need to add structure. And one way to add structure is to integrate design thinking with a product lifecycle management. So it would be nice to understand product lifecycle management in depth so that you can integrate design thinking into it. But the goal of design thinking is to create high value for customers and shareholders fast and with low risk. How do you do that? Now, if you do it well, this is a sure shot way to making a product viral. Now, what kind of products are there? You will look at different design models and you will say, I want to build a software that is B2C, or I want to build a t-shirt, or I want to build an iPhone, or I want to build anything. So in that, you have to understand the ecosystem and the stakeholders. So what do I mean by that? In the ecosystem, it's not just customers, but it is your supply chain. How is the product, services going to become real? How does it become viable? Are you going to make it feasible? So you have to have an ecosystem of partners, and that could include suppliers who are going to give you parts, to distributors who are going to sell your product, or a channel through which you're going to sell your product. You're going to have to understand the entire ecosystem and how it operates before you go into designing your product or service. So the other key takeaway I have from my experience is that desirability is about 80% of the work. Viability and feasibility are important, and in very few cases, I saw that percentage increase. But usually, it's possible to know viability and feasibility very fast. Desirability, on the other hand, is the key factor in making your product viral. So, we're going to look at a lot about and understand a lot about desirability and understand how do you make your product so desirable that the customer or the user or the buyer cannot live without it. How do you make it sticky so that once they use it, they don't want to shift to any other product? So there are some little secret sauces, but they're not so secret. It's more of hard work. So let's jump into some of those things. Now we'll go to the details. You're going to form a team, and in that team you're going to have your little CEO and CFO and CTO, and you're going to sit together and you're going to decide on a product life cycle. You're going to go through the ideation process. From the ideation process, you're going to come to a concept approval. From a concept approval, you're going to go and build the product, and then you're going to take it to market and sell it. But when the iPhone was invented or launched, there were many phones in the market that had much better features than iPhone did. But they did not succeed as well as iPhone did. And because iPhone did a very, very good design thinking before they went into it. And design thinking means understanding the customer. There are two stories about Steve Jobs asking their engineering team that the iPhone has to be more compact than it was. And he wanted it to be very smooth and no aberrations in the structure of the hardware. And the hardware engineer said that there was no more space inside the phone to add or make it smaller. And there was a fish tank in that meeting room, and apparently he threw the phone into the fish tank and there were some bubbles. And he said, see, I can see some space. Go make it smaller. So there are anecdotal stories like that about good design in which you have to be adamant about it. So let's start with the understanding the ecosystem. There's a simple chart I have put together where kind of the basics of what you need. And on the side are some of the key documents you need to collateral that you need to start developing as you go through the process. And these documents are the ones that are most valuable to VCs. So when somebody is funding your startup, which is one of your big goals to get funding at this stage. So to get funding, you need to do diligence to find out that to allow the VCs to be able to understand your problem, understand who you're solving the problem for, to understand what root causes of those problems are, and hence why you came to the capability or the service or whatever gizmo it is you're making. And very importantly, this whole process goes through iterative testing with the customer at every point. So we start with understanding the ecosystem. You understand the players and their interaction flow. It's very important to understand how the players talk to each other, what they do in the ecosystem. In the illustrative example, when we get there, you will understand this better. You have to understand the market segmentation. You have to understand the growth, the usual stuff. I think you would know all this. The competitive analysis to see what other players are playing in a similar place. And then you have to frame the problem. This is a big issue. In our minds, we think we're solving certain problems. But as you iterate with the customer, you realize that that was not the original problem you set out to solve. And the customer actually has a different set of problems. So you have to be able to reframe the problem at every iteration if required until you are solving a real problem, a problem that is of high value to the customer. And then be able to find how much that customer values solving that problem. And that is the value assessment part. So we do this by defining the players, and then we define a persona. We'll go through what a persona is and how you break down the details of a persona. And then you have to document the personas as is business process flow. So in this case, we'll see a shopkeeper in a Kirana store keeper. And so you have to know that he gets up in the morning, he brushes his teeth, then he wears a chappal, and then he goes to the shop and he does a puja and he opens his counter where the cash is and measures this, and then opens the shutter and starts his business. So the entire business process flow of how he does what he does should be mapped out. And then we look at what are the pain points at each of those process places. When we document that, we are able to do a root cause analysis of each of the pain. We'll see that later. What comes out of this root cause analysis is there are some pain points that you just can't solve. If he has a hole on his roof and you're trying to build an IT solution, you're not going to fix that hole in the roof. The rain is going to come through that. So in that shop, you have to categorize what are the pain points you have and capabilities that you can actually build for, or what you want to build for. And then you have to break it down into business problems and then technical problems. So a lot of products and services are accompanied by business programs. We shall see how that works. So if those business programs are not part of your offering or service, the product will fail. For example, an iPhone usually comes with the ability for you to buy it on loan, not just pay cash. So Apple offers, alongside with its partner, maybe a bank, the ability for you to take a loan to buy an iPhone. That loan taking service is a business program that runs alongside the product Apple. So without that, there will be a lot of customers who will not have the ability to afford an Apple. So when they did their design thinking, they figured out that since we are pricing it at a very high price, we might miss a segment of the population if we don't give them the ability to buy it, etc. So, so I can't stress more importantly that design thinking does not work if you do not have value created assessment at each iteration. You have to validate the value you're creating whenever you come to a feature or a capability. And then there comes the standard thing after you've started, you've got all your capabilities, is now you're defining the solution. You're saying, okay, we have to build a B2C and not a B2B because we found this was the real problem and that wasn't the problem we started with, and this is not feasible and that is, viable, etc. When you come to that, you will now be able to define what business solution you are going to offer, whether it's a service or a product, etc. And it is through that value assessment that you prioritize the capabilities that you're going to offer. When you prioritize, that priority is going to the backlog, and the backlog is what the development team is going to develop. That means the most valuable stuff goes at the top. Now, sometimes, due to architectural constraints, your team might have to build something to allow for that valuable feature to be built. That's an exception. But generally speaking, your capability list has to be prioritized based on value created. So the value creation part has to come again and again. The assessment has to be done during every assessment. Now, there are other things like pricing and cost and value and ecosystem program and a risk register, and you have to get the architecture of the plant, you have to plan your sprints, and you have to create marketing programs and demand creation programs, and you have to do your revenue forecasts and management. All that comes later. What comes first, which is what this course is about, is the design thinking part and getting it right up front. You can build the greatest product on planet Earth and nobody will buy it if you haven't empathized with your user. Remember, You need to empathize with the user. You need to empathize with your buyer. Both of those may be two different people. A company might buy the software and the decision making for buying is with the CFO's team. But that software may be used by engineers who don't really buy the software, they use the software. You have to empathize with both parties to understand what are their pain points before you launch your product or create your product for that matter. So um, jumping ahead, for this particular forum, you have to understand that your priority is getting funding. If you don't get funding, your startup goes nowhere. Now, funding could mean you're bootstrapping it yourself, or you're going to a VC, or you're getting an angel, or college is funding it, whatever the funding is. You have to realize that that persona, the person funding it, or the team, or the group, or whatever, has specific things they require from you to be able to give you that money. Imagine it was your hard-earned money. Would you put that in a startup? And if you did, what are the things you would like to see from the startup in terms of data before you give them a term sheet? So if while you're doing the design thinking, you're able to get your persona, pain points, problem statement defined very strong, you're able to give a good outline of your solution that you're defining. You're able to define the right solution. More importantly is the value created report. Once you have the value created report, every VC can understand how much value you're creating. So if you're creating 10 lakh rupees for a shopkeeper and the cost of your product is 200 rupees, everybody can see the value you've created. If they can see that the adoption, a piloted working prototype, the GTM shows how you're going to capture the customer. And very importantly, for every VC, it is the risk register. What are the risks? What are the mitigations for the risk? What are the cost for each of the mitigations that you are doing? You have to be transparent, open, and be able to. Most VCs will not mind risks if you have it on your risk register and it very nicely says what are the possible mitigation tactics or methods you're using and what's the cost for that mitigation. Every business, every project has risks, and every risk can be mitigated. There is only costs associated with those risks. And finally, of course, if anybody's investing in you, they're looking for the ROI. So please, you have to be able to do forecasts. I see most startup teams get stuck at unable to do forecasts. So that in itself is a skill. Be able to say realistically how your customers are adopting it. Where are you putting the money these VCs are giving you, and how are they going to get their money back? That is the key bottom line of this. But if you have these, you are 90% there. Now, very importantly, most VCs I know look at the team. If the team is capable of pulling this off, that's when they give you the money. Otherwise, you can think of other strategies. Now, there is bootstrapping. Bootstrapping means you try to call your uncle and get some money and just slog it until you get a product and you get positive ARR, you get some revenue, and you do it yourself without any funding. That path is also there. But startups are startups. So having said that, I'm going to jump to the illustrative example. And before I do that, I just want to check if there are any questions so far in the chat. Anyone with any questions, please type it out there so I can see if there are any questions so far. No questions? All right, I'll continue with the example. Am I still audible? Am I in the room?
Yes, yes, you are audible, and I think they are going to open up for questions towards the end.
All right, all right, all right. So I'll jump now to the example. So I picked up this example because this is a large example. This is not a small project. And the reason for doing that is to be able to showcase that you can do any sized project, product, service, and use design thinking to get an effective solution or a viral product out there. Okay. So what was the challenge? The challenge was this was SAP, a big company, and their board gave a challenge that we had to build a $200 million business for India. It had to be an end-to-end business network for the last mile aligned to SAP's strategy. SAP is in the world of ERP and business solutions for the retail space. We had to build an extremely high operating margin. So that means low cost while operating it with decent amount of revenue coming in. We had to use extensive design thinking and get our desirability quotient extremely high. The biggest problem was this was to be done crowdsourcing. That means there was no headcount, there was no budget to build a team to build this. We had to go and crowdsource from the part-time people employees had to come and contribute to the project. And we did prove it successful that most employees in most large companies have about 30% of time that they can give to innovation. We also had to enable a large ecosystem of partners and fellow travelers. We'll see that. And there was minimum usage of SAP resources allowed. That means data center or, whatever the money that we required. So this was zero budget. We had 75% net profit plan of record. This was had about $1 billion in global potential for SAP. 75 employees volunteered for this project. And we validated with about 200 retailers. This was a retail solution. And we enabled some big services, for India. So what was the process? We had to understand the market. We had to use design thinking methodology. We had to go and build and pilot the product. We had to build out the ecosystem and roll out the product. As simple as that. So under assessment of market, we did an assessment of the market and the ecosystem, understood all that, and did the entire process that we've just talked about. So this was what the market looked like. 94% of FMCG sales happen through the last mile of the 8 million unorganized retail stores in India. That means all the Kirana stores you see and all the Panwala shops you see and anybody selling a shampoo or a toothpaste in India. At the time when we started the project, there were 8 million. At this today, I think they're about 9 to 10 million. We don't know exact numbers. But 12 FMCG companies in India do about 80% of the business in India. 12. That includes, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, Godrej, Colgate, the big boys. And among these 12, they have 20,000 distributors about, and there are about 80,000 wholesalers in India. And when this project started, the total was about 33 billion. Today, it's about $55 billion of business every year. These 12 FMCGs do. So we knew that the FMCGs were one of the big players whose pain points we had to solve. We found that they don't know what's happening in the last mile, and they don't have, there's so much wastage that, an example would be, it's raining in Kerala and all the umbrellas have been shipped by container to Rajasthan. And that's a very common problem, that there's no umbrellas to sell in Kerala while there's an excessive of umbrellas sitting in Rajasthan and no one is buying it there. they don't have any information to the last mile. They can't see who bought what and what's the inventory going on. And we thought that's like, a big value to add after we did our design thinking. Now, we go to the design thinking part and we say, what if the top 1 million of these 8 million stores could share their sales information in real time? What if, while doing so, they resolve their own key business points, pain points? What if we can create a new retail ecosystem in all emerging economies, not just India? And by doing this, we would be enabling bank credit to small retailers. While we did the design thinking, we found that retailers could not grow because they don't get any bank credit. And the reason they don't get any bank credit is there is no information regarding their business that the bank can use to give them credit in the first place. So, and why don't they have any information? And that's because most Kirana shops don't have any automated system to capture that information. We also saw that, a shop moderately sized, the top 1 million out of these 9 million, could afford $100 POS device. That is that cashier, register, as you call it. So by the way, when we started doing this, India did not have Paytm, did not have mobile money at that time. Aadhaar was just getting established. This project helped with the Aadhaar system, with the architecture of the Aadhaar system as well. We were working with Nandan Nilekani, who was at that time the head of Aadhaar, to see that Aadhaar had the abilities that could help this project vis-a-vis this project could help what Aadhaar needs. So in the process, we found a lot of information, and this is what summarizes the ecosystem. In the bottom line, you can see 12 CPG companies or FMCG companies. CP stands for consumer products, or FMCG is fast moving consumer products. They have 20,000 distributors, 80,000 wholesalers, and retailers are distributed in this kind of manner. They're about 8.3 million at that time. Revenue wise, the high retail chains were very few, and that is less than 100 players. I'm talking about the big box, like Reliance or, whatever, the big retail boxes that are there, box players that are there. Then you have specialty type of retailers, a pharmacy shop or, is also selling some retail goods. Then you have the mid-sized city retailer who is doing pretty decent. But the urban and rural retailer were the largest volume in terms of number of shops. So we wanted to work with the top 1 million out of these 8.3 million. So we looked at what do they do? So consumer goods manufacturers manufacture the product. They give it to the distributor. The distributor then gives it to the wholesaler. The distributor also may go and give it to a retailer. The distributor may give it to a stockist, and the stockist gives it to a retailer. What happens is the consumer goods companies are the one who run their marketing programs. So the advertisements you see for Colgate or some shampoo comes from the consumer goods manufacturer. And then goods are ordered along this supply chain, and goods are delivered and payments are made. As simple as that. But in every place, there are problems. So when the goods manufacturer sets out a marketing program, let's say if you buy a toothpaste, you get a toothbrush free. What happens in India is the general distributor will pass that marketing program on to the wholesaler. And the wholesaler is going to hoard all the bundled products. And then some little guy sitting in the back of the wholesaler is going to break open the toothpaste and the toothbrush separately. And they're going to wait until the marketing campaign is over. And then they will go and sell the product to the retailer at a lower price, because now they have two products. So the effectiveness of marketing programs were not getting realized at the retailer end, let alone the consumer end. A lot of it, I'm talking about 60% of programs that consumer products were starting were not happening. You could put millions of dollars worth of advertisement, and that was about the only way you could reach a consumer. There are a lot of other programs that they ran that were not getting the effectiveness. So penetration was an issue, forecasting was an issue, about 60% stockouts. But India has a very, very weird system which does not happen in any other country. When you go to a retail store and you say, Uncle, mere ko ye toothpaste do, and he doesn't have it in his store, he will send his little boy to some other place who will bring that toothpaste to you and give it to you. So in effect, when the distributor or the wholesaler is trying to validate if this retail guy has that Colgate in his stock, you can't measure it because he's getting it from some other store and bringing it and selling it. So we had all these kind of issues to figure out. So first we did the process. Let's identify the retailers. We identified 154 retailers. We carried out about 274 interviews with these retailers. Now, I'll be very specific about interviews. When you're passionate about an idea, you're the most wrong person to go and do interviews. So we hired interns from colleges who had no idea what the project was about so that they could go and ask questions in an unadulterated manner. Because it's human tendency for us to lead the questions in such a way that you get answers that you want to hear. Now, design thinking doesn't work like that. Design thinking works when you actually are able to get to hear the real pain points that the persona has. And that's a very, very important thing I need to stress. Lots of interviews we conducted in the beginning were wrong because we were leading the personas to answer exactly what we wanted to hear. And that is not the way you conduct an interview to get real pain points or real business work process flows of a persona. Keep that in mind. When creating the business process flows, you have to come back and do that homework. You have to sit down and make a process flow map that shows what the business process flow was, and in each process, what is the pain points. After you assess the pain points, you do a root cause analysis. How do you do a root cause analysis? You take a pain point and you ask 5 whys. So I have a pain point. My leg is paining. Why? Because I walked too long. Why? Because I was doing exercise. Why? Because I need to lose weight. Why? Because I ate too much food. So the root cause analysis of my leg pain is eating too much food. Now, if I solve the eating too much food problem, that is the capability that will let my pain in the leg go away. So that's how you do root cause analysis. So every business process, you find the pain point, you do the root cause analysis, and from that comes the capabilities or the recommended initiatives that will define your solution. So this requires you to practice it with different teams, be able to understand this process. This is the core of design thinking. You get this wrong, you got it all wrong. Now, there are other methods of design thinking where you're brainstorming and running a workshop and putting sticky notes on a board where you're finding out the what ifs and all that. This method allows you to get it in a structured way, simple, right the first time. Anyway, you can try the different methods to see how you increase desirability. Here's an example of a persona. So Atul runs the store. He starts his day like this, and what will make his life easier. This is a summary, okay? So you find the percentages of the tools that exists. What are the system or the tools he had at the time when we did the interview. He had a Nokia phone and a Citizen calculator. One of the key things we found is most retailers at that time were semi-literate. They couldn't read and write properly. They could understand numbers. They could understand logos. They could understand pictures. So we had to build a system that was for semi-literate. This is an example of a process flow map on the left-hand side. It shows you what part of the process, what are the tools being used, and then the process goes from end to end, from top to down. I kind of put it in a small just to give a summary. And from that, we have the pain points. You know, the pain points translate into what happens in the different segments of the business process flow. Um, so in purchase, he had the lack of sufficient funds, or he had stock outs. In sales, he had the inability to handle multiple customers during peak hours. You have to write everything down, irrespective of what your vision of your product or your solution is. You have to write everything down so that these curves out to what your real product is going to be, not what you started thinking it's going to be. Okay? So in the end, you'll have a value assessment. This is a value assessment summary, right? You'll have a more detailed one for individual. So what we found is that for every segment, the value created after calculating each shop, approximately how much money they would make more if we had solved their pain points. And this was kind of a summary. You can create in the rural retail sector $1.2 billion worth of value per year if you solved this. CPGs would increase their profit by about 10% for just the volume of goods. The inventory would reduce by 5%. Distributor profit increases 10 to 20%. Inventory optimizations go about 10 to 15%. Retailer profit increases 20 to 40% if you can enable the credit using the data that we capture. Value-added services may anywhere between 30 to 40%. Value-added services are because you have a device. Now, what else can you do with the device at the retailer store? So you can do money transfer, you can do video conferencing, you can do whatever. Lots of value-added services arrives as soon as you have a device at the retailer store, etc. So this is how a value report looks like. This is a summary. You can make a lot, but remember, it always comes with assumptions. It comes with the detailed Excel sheet. That's what the VC wants to see. How well did you do your value assessment of the design thinking result? In the end, this was the solution we decided on. So SAP Ganges would be a business network for retail. It's kind of like a platform. And then you have these web-based solutions for banks, telecoms, value-added service providers, OEMs, the CP companies, that is the FMCG, the consumer products group, companies, the distributors and wholesalers, and retailers had to have a device of some sort. But this would all connect to a platform, and the platform would allow for all these transactions to take place. So when a retailer sells toothpaste, the CP company can see that this much of toothpaste has been sold in this city of India today. And at the same time, that data is going to come through a cell phone network. So the telecom company is aware of that transaction. The banks can see how much each retailer sold per month, and therefore can offer the retailer credit to give them more working capital, etc., etc., etc. So you have the value to customers, you list out the problems for each of them, the pain points against, how to improve. I'm going to jump this because lots of them, you have to do it for all the ecosystem partners. You have to do it for everybody who is involved in your product. Okay. So in the end, we launched 6 products in the beginning with limited capabilities in each of these. Okay, so we had SAP Ganges for CP companies, SAP Ganges for distributor. So what's is basically a web-based SaaS solution that a distributor logs in and he can see all his retailers and is able to, see what inventory they have and what sales they're doing, and decide what kind of how he has to arrange the truck that is going to drop the next series of goods, etc., etc. I'm going to jump to the key products we built. We built a command center at SAP where we could see all the transaction happening in India globally on maps and be able to control the master data, be able to, there's a lot of back-end cleaning, house cleaning had to be done because different products have different SKUs and There's a lot of loose products in these shops. There's someone is selling rice. How many kinds of rice are there? What's the price of rice? The loose rice that he just got from the farm. How many kinds of basmati rice is he selling? Not the packaged ones, the unpackaged ones. If a retailer is selling a banana, how would you price the banana? Can he add and change the price? All that stuff, that's called all master data management. And that's a lot of work that had to be done on the back end. The POS devices you see, that's yellow, green, and blue, is what we finally managed to develop a $100 product. Now remember, we didn't have any money. We didn't have any team. We didn't have any expertise. So how did we develop such things? So I'll come back to the screen. The POS. We had to develop a point of sale device. It had to be very inexpensive. It had to be based on off-the-shelf products like a tablet, a printer, a scanner, and a keyboard. It had to be for Indian conditions. It could handle rugged, dusty, high temperature, low temperature, and chai falling on the screen. It has to use minimum compute power, which means the battery had to last forever because there's load shedding here. And when it goes down, we have to be able to service it in 3 minutes by a local vendor. So how do we do this? Just showing you pictures. In the middle at the top, that POS machine is made with paper cardboard just to get the sizing right. And as it evolved, the second POS machine, the black one, is actually a real working POS machine that we built with a local guy who actually does tin fabrication in a garage somewhere in Bangalore in one of the gullies. And we put a real tablet in there, and these are off-the-shelf little parts that we stuck in there and started the software. When we built the software, we had to change the software many times until it became for semi-literate people. Finally, when we had the right design and everything, then we had to start negotiations with ODM in Taiwan and in China and other places to see how we can get a product developed. Because remember, SAP is a software company, the world's largest enterprise software, but nevertheless a software company. And they would not allow us go and build a hardware in any terms. And so as a startup, SAP being our VC, we had to go and outsource the building of this outside. But we had to build the design ourselves and make sure that the negotiation done with the ODM and the OEM was such that we're using products they already manufacture for their other products, for their other things. So the tablet was an existing tablet. We just took the cheapest one. And, our cost price had to come down to like $23 so that we can sell it at $100. So this is design thinking grounds up 101. I cannot tell you 100 iterations before we got it right. Okay. So if you look at the software, the right-hand corner, the Maggi noodles, parachute oil, this was one of the iterations before the final where they wanted pictures because they would understand, and they wanted numbers because they wanted to know it's a 1 liter bottle or a half-liter bottle, but they don't want any more writing on the screen. The other screens, however, are for the CPG and the FMCG, where you have people who are very literate and very competent in data management, and they want to see the data in specific ways. Okay. So that said, we had to run multiple programs. You have the field pilot going on, you have the infrastructure build out going on, you have the ecosystem relationship building going on with all the these partners, you have the value validation going on every time, and you have, of course, the development process going on. So all this going on simultaneously before you can get to launch a product. This is just how we build the ecosystem out, what the partners we start talking to, building the agreements, etc. It's a complex project, but we had the advantage that our VC being SAP could open doors for us, which is not so easy when you're doing a startup standalone. So our way to capturing customer was go to the CP like Colgate and tell them, Can you tell your distributor to get his top 100 retailers to buy our product? And when you did it in reality, the distributor said, don't worry about it. I'll buy all of them and just give it to my retailers because this is so valuable to me. That data is so valuable to me. And we were going, no, the retailer is not going to use it unless the retailer is paying for it. India has an attitude that if you give something free, it is not valuable. So we had to make the retailer pay the $100 for it so that we could validate, our design thinking showed that he's not going to use it unless he paid for it. And so we had to make the distributor understand this and say, no, let him buy it. And so when 100 retailers from each distributor came, remember there are 20,000 distributors in India. That alone tells you the volume game you're playing. Anyway, with that, I'm going to stop because the example goes on and on and on and on. So we are going to go back to design thinking and questions. So I will go back to the process, and I think a lot of the questions may be from process. I don't know. Thank you very much.
Hi, Abhijit. So this is Sarishma. I'm leading the incubator here at Graphic. So I wanted to ask one question on behalf of the students. Like most of these students are starting from first year, second year, third year. And what we want them to do is we want them to like open up their minds and actually go towards different kinds of, idea generation and think the entire thing through before they come to my incubator and ask for funds. So I wanted to ask
Right.
you like what would be the correct roadmap for incorporating design thinking into their thought processes if they are coming as a fresher point, or they are aspiring entrepreneurs, like they want to get into entrepreneurship maybe in another year or 2 years or 4 years. So what would be your comments on that?
So I like to look at it like, problems. If I asked you right now to make a list of 10 problems that the world has, and the largest problems, the biggest problems, and I say, just write 10, and then look at those problems and say, okay, how can we solve this problem? And form a team that goes, all right, we can, let's take an example. All right, let's say you want to solve global warming. That's as big a problem as you can think of. And you go like, okay, that's a very big pie. You should you should bite what you can chew. So how are you going to break this down into uh, a startup, a business that makes money and is valuable, but at the same time, trying to solve this global warming problem. So in the global warming, you break it down. Let's say you do the assessment of the market and you do the research and all that stuff, and you come down to, let's try to reduce carbon dioxide in cities. Okay, so in a napkin, you say there's a box here. This is our technology, and this box sucks in carbon dioxide and converts it into something useful. We don't know what technology is inside that box. Okay, so we just know that that's what we want to do. We want to be able to sell these boxes to cities around the world, and all it does is sucks carbon dioxide from the air and converts into something useful. Now, what is useful with carbon? The most expensive thing right now, generally speaking, is carbon nanotubes. So can we convert this carbon dioxide into carbon nanotubes? Let's assume we can. Put a box there in the napkin and go like, okay, this does that. So we have this idea now. The idea says we are going to sell this box that is going to take carbon dioxide from the air and is going to make carbon nanotubes. Now you do an assessment of the ecosystem and you go, who can I sell this to? Oh, I can sell this to factories that have got chimneys that are, spitting out carbon dioxide, like a steel plant or iron works or something like that. I can sell it to cities in the big traffic where there's a lot of pollution. I can sell it for etc. You're finding out your customer base. You're finding out the problem. You're finding out, okay, how do we go to the technologies? I need to form a team, and in that I need someone who has done some materials engineering to understand nanotechnologies. So let me go research it. If Elon Musk can build rockets that go to Mars, without having any background in rocket technology, but just reading a book. So what I'm trying to say is you have to think like that, and you have to take a problem that is a big problem and start with that. Now, I've seen a lot of startups, uh, young students come out of college and say, I'm going to make this fashion t-shirt that I'm going to sell. And to me, that's not a problem you're solving. Yes, you can sell t-shirts. I'm sure you can. And you can make really good design t-shirts too. But you start with challenging problems and you form a team that will be dedicated to trying to solve this problem. Now, when you have got this idea and you start going to these personas and doing your interviews and figuring out the reality, that solution that you were originally planning to do will change. It will become something that is really, really valuable to these customers, to the same people you're going and asking, and slowly it will be something very viable. Now, this is coming from a design thinking point of view. That is user-centric solutions, pain points of users that you're trying to solve. You can go the other way. You can go the push way and say, no, I'm going to build this cool invention that I'm going to sell. And I know that this thing doesn't exist today and will not exist for the next 5 years in quantum science. Yeah, you can go be a quantum scientist and figure out encryption using quantum so that 5 years from now you're in demand. Build a company out of that. You will not have any users you can go and interview on that front. So you have both sides of the spectrum. The goal as a student is to understand what the environment is right now. I just came from the Bay Area. I was there for about a year. I was doing an assessment of what AI has, what the impact of AI is. I'm seeing driverless cars, and I'm seeing interviews are being conducted by AIs instead of HR. I'm seeing meetings in which 15 people, I was in a meeting, there were 15 people in the meeting, 3 were humans. Today's meeting, I don't know how many of you guys have just turned on an AI and recording this session by AI and not even in this conference. So that's coming. Lots of jobs are going. Lots of careers are going to change. So your thinking as an entrepreneur using design thinking can be applied anywhere. I don't know if I'm answering this right, but this is a lecture of its own. It's a very big workshop I have, which I conduct for students, usually of career guidance in today's technology, in the AI world and in quantum science. What should you do for the next 5 years? So that's a short answer. Does that help?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. With that being said, I would request if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and simply ask him.
Before we move on to the questions, like there are some questions in the chat already. I will give everybody speaker permission soon. I just wanted to convey
Okay.
that I have just posted the attendance form for all the attendees. Guys, please make sure that you fill the form. It will be open for 5 minutes until 8:13 p.m. Yes, sir. Please go on.
Okay, so I have a question here. What are the most common mistakes beginners make in the empathy stage? Well, the biggest, I already said it, is you tend to go to ask questions whose answers you want to hear. You're already clouded by an idea. And so you think that you are going to validate your idea by getting the persona to say exactly what you want to hear. As opposed to that, really understanding what the persona has to say, what the persona's pain points are, without any input from your side. So empathy, the biggest mistake I see is not understanding the concept of internalizing empathy, to not be able to have a say in the idea, let that person say it, and noting it down the way they said it. Usually you note it down. By the way, you're not supposed to take notes during the interviews. You're supposed to just listen, and then you go back wherever it is you are from, and then while it's fresh in your mind, you put the notes down of what you heard. You can do a recording and then translate that. But the point is not to make the the persona change his answers because he's conscious that you are taking notes or you want to hear a certain kind of answer. I don't know if that helps. My question is, what things could be prevented in the sales strategy of a company? Because I think marketing of a product and a service is one most crucial part. Well, sales strategy is a big thing. Marketing is a big thing. I don't know what is the one thing that could be prevented. Again, it comes back to the world of, if you do your design thinking well, you understand your customer well, then your channel strategy, your marketing campaigns, or your will be much better. You have seen advertisements where you get a gut feeling that they understand you. That means they did their job well, as opposed to just putting a picture of the product and saying buy it, with some tagline. Marketing agencies do a good job as far as design thinking is concerned, I would say. But if you're doing it as a startup and you are a small group of students coming together to form a startup, you get a very high success rate if you build an ecosystem of support advisors. You have to build a board of advisors extensive that will advise you in each part of the process, especially with something later stages, which is marketing, and that comes later. You first have to get the product right. Next one is, what strategies can be implemented to ensure the survival and sustainable growth of our direct-to-consumer D2C business, while simultaneously attracting and retaining customers and securing investor investment? That's a very loaded question. Secret sauce is you narrow down your consumer first. It's not D2C, it is D2 specific C. So if you are selling a product to teenage girls with pink ponytails, that's the persona you've defined. And therefore, if you do your diligence on that and you find out their business process and you find out their pain points, you will have a product customized to that specific category of consumers. Hence, this loyalty, because you understand and empathize with them very well. If you go broad and you say consumers and everybody is thrown in that bucket, not a good idea. You have to break the market by going niche. You have to be specific category of people who are really in a big pain point that you're solving. And the value you create for them should be so immense that they cannot live without you. And once you do that, you get your foot in the door, you're entrenched, you will have created a brand for yourself. You will have created the awareness for yourself. Next stages of going into, big branding and big marketing, that's a different stage. But that's where you can secure, I think, you can lock in a customer. And making a product, secure, a product secure is creating moats. I hope you've come across the word moats. Moats are, like you have a castle and you have this water around it, the moat that stops enemies or competitors from crossing over. So you have to be very careful about listing your moats. One of the moats I like for my products is usually making it sticky. Give it away free, but once the consumer is on board, a consumer loves it so much, and or otherwise cannot move away from it. Other kinds of moats include make it so highly valuable that your competition cannot come on. Most people make products that Microsoft will just add a feature to their Excel sheet and your whole business goes down. So you have to be very careful that you're building moats that the big companies don't come and just build one feature. For them, it's a feature. For you, it's a whole product. So you have to be careful about that. So creating moats would be good. Now, if you have strong moats, maybe you have secured, some patents. You have secured a way of getting consumers. That is in effect securing investor interest. Because at the end of the day, the investor is very, very smart. Don't underestimate this. The smartest, your biggest ally in getting the right product made is your VC. Because the VC, it's his money. He's not going to put that money unless he's sure he's going to get a return of investment. So he's going to try to make your product as best as it can be. So, the partnership with a good VC, where you listen to the VC, trust their instinct, because they have done a lot of investment. They know what they're talking about anyway, in terms of, and it's their money. If it was your money, your hard-earned money, how much would you require reassurance before you would invest it in my bakery? I am going to open a bakery. I am going to make bread. Would you put your 1 lakh rupees that you have saved in the last 1 year, 2 years, 5 years in my bakery? And why? I have to really be able to justify value that my customers desire me so much that I'm making sourdough bread using quinoa, and it's good for diabetic patients, and I have proved it with a report, and these are my customers who have tested and tried it and love it so much. So I'm just giving an example, all right? It can be a simple thing like that. How do we know if the value we are measuring is the same value the end user experience? You don't measure you are not the one measuring value. You are just calculating the totals of what the customer values it. So if a customer says, this product, if this pain point were not there using a service, I am willing to pay 100 rupees for it. So the customer values it at 100 rupees. And then you look, after verifying with multiple customers, you know approximately that this feature is valued at 100 rupees. Now you have to make sure that this feature costs you 2 rupees. So you can sell it for 10. And if you sell it for 10 and the customer is gaining 90 rupees, that's extremely high value for the customer. What if you had to buy a laptop today for your college, and the laptop had AI inbuilt to automatically answer all your questions and be able to teach you everything you need and all your pain points that you have in passing these exams? How much would you value it at? Would it be 1 lakh or 50,000 rupees? And if it was, say, 1 lakh, and I sold you that laptop for just 5,000 rupees, that would be extreme high value for you. That's how you measure value. You don't measure value by what you think is the value. It's what the customer thinks is going to pay for it. I hope that answered that question. What is a good way to test further an idea if it is worth pursuing? You have to talk to customers. If you're using design thinking, you have to go and unadulterated active listening. Understand what is active listening. Active listening is not preparing yourself to answer, while the other person is talking. So it's very hard for our culture. But nevertheless, understand what is active listening. Active listening is able to coax the person to continue talking in the topic of their interest that they are talking about. Okay, so be able to listen and really listen. Understand the difference between listening and hearing. We all hear. Most of us don't internalize it. When you internalize it, you are listening. All right? How can we balance between staying true to our startup's core values and vision while being flexible to market and trends? Your startup's core values and vision. Your startup's core values and vision start with the fact that you are in it to make money. Otherwise, you are not running a startup, you are in an NGO. Okay? So if you're in a startup, you're here to make money. And how do you make money? You make money by being successful. And the way to be successful is to go viral. And to go viral is high desirability, which means you are really creating good value. Conning people by showing them good value but actually not providing good value won't make you last long, and therefore you will not really be successful. So you have to think of it as the core values that you define in your company. As to start with, okay, to make money, we are going to do this by doing this valuable activity. We're going to develop from these resources this as our product so that we can solve this problem for our customer. And you will be true to any value you write. Any value. Now, I'm not talking about employee values and all that. That is later. That is about how you run a company, and that has nothing to do with customer or that. You can run a design thinking workshop, by the way, to understand how to manage employees and how to make an effective organization. That's nothing to do with entrepreneurship and getting a product out and service out. Please, I think that's all. There is one. I think it's easier for a large company to use its resources to understand, identify a problem, verify a problem, and this. Absolutely true. But unfortunately, we didn't have that luxury. We were given the directive of not using any SAP resources. However, of course, we cheated a little. Like, for example, when we wanted to go and open the doors to talk to a partner, we would say that, hey, we're coming from SAP. And that is not really cheating, but we're using the brand name, which allowed it to open a lot of doors. That's to be honest. Now, if I go in there as a startup, Adi Godrej is not going to see me. Neither is his CTO. So having a good network, a good ecosystem of shareholders, fellow travelers that you create using VC funds, angels, and board of advisors, that's the way you counteract this problem. Large company can use its resources. No large company gives you resources if you're trying to do incubation in their company. Very few do. But I mean, they talk about it in press, but in reality, it's not that. Large company is as good as. In fact, a lot of things in startups are way better. The politics and all that in large companies are much worse than you can imagine. So yes, you're right. You can use resources if you're lucky. Otherwise, you don't get resources easily. They are just another VC, and you just happen to be sitting in their offices. You could be sitting in Starbucks. I think with that, I'm over time and all the questions answered, hopefully. Any more questions?
I think we have one last question. Then we can wrap up, right? I just saw one question that popped up in the chat.
Okay, Prachi asks, what are the most common mistakes people make while applying design thinking? There are a lot of problems, a lot of common mistakes, but common mistakes is claiming you're doing design thinking, but actually you are just, doing it for the sake of doing it and not really listening. Listening is the biggest problem I saw. Empathy is, not so common feature. So EQ is more important than IQ, right? So understand how to, what is EQ and how to get your EQ high. Be able to empathize well. Listening is a skill that you have to develop. There are a lot of workshops and there are a lot of practicing games you can do with your friends to practice active listening. So you get to a point where I think the biggest problems I see with design thinking is that sometimes you have to come to terms that the idea you started with is not the idea you're going to end up with. But in the end of the day, you will have a problem that has a high pain point for customers that you will have solved, and therefore will be extreme of high value, and therefore a good money making potential, a feasibility of a good startup would be very good. So the positives outweigh the negatives in design thinking, I would say. Is this a new one or is it an old one? If I launched a D2C brand in a specific niche, like trending, drop shipping, जो दिखता है वही बिकता है, What do you think most effective way to market a product? That's a marketing question, not a design thinking question. I can give you, a 2-day lecture on marketing and how to get this to market, but that's not a design thinking question, please. So I will refrain from answering that. Uh, Next time, if the organizers feel appropriate, I would like to take a workshop on what are the AI ideas. AI is going to change lives like anything. I can't even, verbalize it right now. So if those of you who are planning to build a startup, any kind of startup that has to do with AI, maybe that's the kind of workshop we should have. Anyway, with that said, from the organizers, any questions for me? Anything?
So I think everything has been covered. And
Sorry?
thank you
Yes,
for this.
we are happy. Yeah, thank you very much. We
All
don't have
right.
any more questions. It was covered beautifully. Thank you very much.